The reason I desperately need this is because I want to show you the debate. In our first class, I told you that we are going to have Moodle debates. That's part of your grading. And it already started. For those who didn't notice it, we have a debate, ongoing debate. Here's what I do. Every week, I put a question, okay? And make sure that you can see all the weeks, okay? So turn all the weeks on by clicking here. And so this week, we have the historical background presentation, and then we have the debate on the historical background. So when you click on it, you're just going to see my question, and you're going to see the answers that already started, I think yesterday, okay? So you have your friends who started the discussion. There is no limit to how much you write. I know that's the first question that you're going to ask. There is no limit. So you can, well, try to write sensibly because I have to read them, right? So try to write a decent amount. Try to focus on what the question is asking. The question here is asking something that Strayer Reading discusses and something that I give you hints from time to time during the lecture. Okay? So the question is, looking back at the historical background that we have covered so far, how do you think the international system could evolve differently? Because it evolved in a certain way, right? It could have been differently, but it wasn't, right? So the question here is asking, why are we going to focus more on the West than the East, basically? Because I am going to focus more on the West, right? And the question that I always get is, why isn't it the Ottoman Empire or the Eastern civilizations that we don't focus on in this course? Well, I'm not going to tell you the answer just yet. I want you to discuss it here. Well, I think the most decent thing to do here is to give you 2 weeks to answer each debate, okay? So answer it this week and maybe next week as well. But after that, unless you have a burning thing going on in your head, move on, okay? Because there will be a debate every week. So if you just decide to start all the debates by the end of the semester, that actually shows me that you're panicking, okay? And no professor likes panicky students. We like students, but we don't want you to do the work in the end of the semester. We want you to do the work, you know, as soon as the work is requested. So here's the debate. Start contributing. Like I said, you can write 2 sentences or you can write 2 paragraphs. It's your decision. I am not going to grade you on how much you write, okay? And the most important rule here is be very careful with plagiarism, okay? Do not copy-paste anything from anywhere, all right? Your English, a level of English may be intermediate. I don't care. I'm not grading you for your grammar. Okay? I'm grading you for doing the reading and for thinking about the question and then answering the question. So guys, please do not take anything from anywhere, from other people's works, okay? Sometimes you think, oh, but I found a great quote. When you do find a great quote, cite it, okay? So put the quote in quotation marks and then cite the source, just like you would write in a paper. In a term paper that you're writing, okay? This is something that I'm going to pay quite attention to because honestly, it's very obvious when you take stuff from elsewhere. So, you know, just be careful about it, okay? I'm just giving you a friendly warning here about the debate. And other than that, I think we'll be fine. I checked what was going on in the debate so far, and it looks good. So just go ahead, continue, okay? And when you have questions or problems about the debate, you can actually ask me, and you can ask my assistant, Anastasia. And so don't be shy to ask anything, okay? All right, like I said, in this course, if we lose track of what's going on today, it's hard to catch up with it tomorrow, okay? So as soon as you have any questions, you need to ask the question. Now, I'm going to go on with the historical background. I told you to think about why industrialization is so important and why is it so important to industrialize first or to be an early industrializer. Anyone who actually thought about it? Late industrializers versus early industrializers, yes. Okay, for expanding your territory, industrialization might actually be important. Why? What is industrialization? Let's answer the question, the first question first. What is industrialization? It's a shift to a different type of production, right? So before, most societies are agricultural. What does that mean? They produce.
They depend on lands.
They depend on lands, and they produce what? Raw materials, right? So they're not actually producing anything complex in that sense. So the agricultural societies, shift from agricultural societies to industrialized societies makes a huge difference in everything that we're interested in this course. We're interested in state building, we're interested in economic development, we're interested in military revolution, right? Everything will change once states start to industrialize. Who was the first industrializer? England, okay. So the answer to many first will be England. So we're shifting from agriculture to manufacturing. What's manufacturing? What is manufactured? You're processing raw materials. So you don't actually use the raw material as an end product, you're actually processing it, right? So you don't, in other words, your life standards are improving, right, when you're manufacturing. And from artisan production, there's a shift to machine production. What does that mean? What's artisan production? Okay, humans, I mean, obviously, what kind of products? Artistic? Actually, handmade, right? So, for example, carpets, right? So Mehmet, if he was a carpet maker, suddenly with industrialization, well, not really suddenly, right? Industrialization is a process, but by the time industrialization is completed, Mehmet is kind of like, well, I've been actually working on one carpet for about, I asked it last summer, I think it takes, some of it takes about a month to produce. So for 1 month, Mehmet has been producing this carpet, working on this carpet, right, day and night, we're assuming. And then you have actually machine production, and the carpet can actually be made in about a couple days. And it doesn't look the same, but the buyer does not really understand the difference anymore because there are so many carpets. Mass production leads to the differences in the quality between the handmade product and the factory product, but the buyer is not really able to tell the difference, okay? So for that reason, industrialization kind of crushes the work that Mehmet has been doing for centuries, okay? And his dad and his granddad and grand-granddad. So that actually changes families, right? That actually changes inheriting jobs to your son or to your daughter. That actually changes a lot in the family structure. Maybe you never thought about factories in that way, but I want you to think about it in this way. Another thing is there are new energy sources. What kind of energy sources? Steam power. Now, before industrialization, you have water, right? You always have water, but you don't actually know how to use water to help you with your machine production. So steam becomes, steam is used as something that's going to make production faster. Why? What do we use steam at? Boats, steamships, what else? Trains, yes. So you have trains that work with steam locomotives, right? Factories use steam power. And so you have machines that work faster and faster. Actually, I was going to show you a picture. Yes, something that we hear of, but we don't actually know what it is. Internal combustion engine is a huge development in technology. And it looks like this. This is actually one of the first internal combustion engines. Can you actually see it? You can't? Can I help you with the... Is it better? Okay. So this is one of the first internal combustion engines. And what we do with it is what? Why is it important? What do we use engines in? We will, yes. Not yet. When it was first invented, not yet, but we will in time. We'll use engines, right? In cars. In many different transportation mediums, we'll use engines. What else? Planes, yeah, time will come, we'll fly. What else? Again, factories, right? In factories, we use internal combustion engines, and that also increases the speed of production. Now, I keep saying speed, and I keep running around, right? Why is speed important? Time becomes money after industrialization, right? So the faster things are produced, the more money you make. You mentioned imperialism. Imperialism will be about expanding to other land, right? Expanding to other countries. And there will come colonization. So industrialization actually speeds up these processes of imperialism and colonization. I'm not going to get into the details of it now, but I will in the next few weeks. Okay? So that's why new energy sources are important. Remember the Portuguese carvel? How happy everyone was when it was invented, because now they didn't have to use the land. Well, after railroads are made, you use the land, and much faster. Okay? You don't have to walk, you don't have to use horses. And so it's very important that industrialization brings with it new energy sources. Did you have a question?
No, but since technology is developing, also your population is rapidly increasing, so you have to feed your population.
Okay, your population is increasing, right? So with the population increase, you actually have to feed these people. Well, if your agriculture is not as it was before, so how are you feeding your people? Actually, you are asking a question, you're not aware of it, and that's the question. If you're not an agricultural country anymore, how are you feeding your population? Colonization. Okay. Or you import. Yes, Kıvanç, you import too. I agree. But importing might be too expensive if you don't have colonies. If you have colonies, getting the stuff that you need will not be that difficult and will not be that expensive, okay? So it's very important to be able to feed your people. And remember what I told you, when we have enough money, what do we want? Luxury. Everybody knows. When we have enough, we want luxury. When we want luxury, the best thing is to have these new energy sources so that we can go to these places to get the luxury items we need. So organization of work. Now guys, I keep talking about material things. I know. But another aspect of industrialization is quite non-material. And that is the change in work ethic. Okay? And change in how you organize your workplace. Before, everybody knows each other because there aren't many qualified workers, right? But when you have machine production, that means you now have huge factories. And in these factories, people do not make acquaintances as much as they did before. And people actually experts on small steps of the production. So in a carpet factory, when Mehmet was producing his carpet, he knew everything about every process of making the carpet, okay? I don't know what the processes of making a carpet is, but he did. And every step he was responsible from. When you have factories, the workers no longer need to know every aspect of the production process, okay? So they actually are, imagine that you have a milk factory. There are people who are only experts on bottling the milk, right? And there are other people experts on other different parts of the production process. So we're not actually talking about expertise on the whole product anymore. We actually are talking about expertise on little parts of each product. That's also a huge difference, okay? So the factory system changes the way we think about production. Communication and transportation revolution. Well, we're not talking about the internet yet, but what do we talk about? Remember, printing press was extremely important, remember? And by 1700s and 1800s, other things will become important, such as there will be, okay, in time you're going to have telegraphs. Well, we were using birds before. We were training birds to communicate, you know, from movies, right? And it was true that it was possible to communicate via birds, but it wasn't very reliable. Right? So it was kind of like some of the telecommunications companies we have today. You would send the message and it wouldn't go for about 2 days. And then after you don't need the message anymore, you know, you get that message. That was kind of how it was, okay, before. But then you have different modes of transportation and communication. That's important because as you communicate more, you either get your life either gets much easier because communication might actually bring good stuff, or remember when people communicated with each other, Black Plague came to Europe in 1600s. So communication can be good and bad. There are positives and negatives to it. But in general, I would argue that industrialization led to communication and transportation revolution as well, which was generally good for the international system. Okay, now finally, institutionalization of production of goods and services. Now let me ask you something. Does someone bring the newspaper to your door? Yeah? That's usually the practice, right, in Turkey. So the newspaper is always at your door. My father goes crazy when the newspaper is not there after 7 a.m. because he wakes up early, right? It's probably most of our fathers. And he has to read his newspaper at about 7 a.m. when he's having his first breakfast, okay? So at that point, we can argue that he's used to the service, right? He wants that service. That service is provided to him for the last, I don't know, 30, 40 years, okay? So if you just do not provide that service to him, he'll just go crazy. And the poor guy who brings the newspaper can be sick that day, but he doesn't care because he wants his service. That is another consequence of the Industrial Revolution, guys. We want the service and we want the goods when they're promised, okay? There is a pizza company that says, if I'm more than half an hour late bringing your pizza, you know, we're going to give you the pizza for free. That's actually definitely a consequence of how institutionalization of products have become and has become something that we want, and we want it now, okay? So we owe that to the change in the work ethic that was a consequence of industrialization, okay? So when that pizza it's not there, I go crazy, like my father's newspaper thing. Now, you were right. When we have industrialization, when we have societies shifting from agricultural societies to industrialized societies, we have the need to expand. Because first thing, you need raw materials. You're not producing the raw materials anymore. You need the raw materials from other countries. And also, you need the luxury items. You don't have them, so you need to expand to get those items. And one more thing. You need one more thing. What are you going to do with all these products that you produced in huge amounts? You need to, okay, export them. You need to sell them, right? Distribute them. So you actually need markets to sell the products that you have just produced. And don't forget that I said speed has become the norm. So you're producing really fast. So you have to be selling quite fast as well, right? So if you don't sell, you're not going to increase your wealth. And the rule in the capitalist system is increasing wealth, isn't it? So that is then very important for the international system. You're creating wealth, you need to increase the wealth, you're going to do that by expanding. Okay. At the time, we're talking about an age that expansion is still possible, right? So you have these early industrializers, and then you have these countries that have not industrialized at all. Their military technology does not equal yours, so you can actually go invade wherever you want, still, okay? And that's why colonization is speedily going on, and then we're going to witness the French Revolution. Like I said, guys, in this historical background, I'm not touching upon everything. I'm only talking about the things that I'm going to use for the rest of the semester, okay? So French Revolution will become something that we will talk about in the future. But before that, who industrializes after Britain? France industrializes after Britain. Who after that? Roughly. Netherlands industrializes. Germany, okay, will industrialize. Russia will industrialize. Much later than Japan will industrialize. Yes, Italy will industrialize as well, around the time that Germany will industrialize. So Japan will. By 1900s, in the 20th century, Latin American countries will start industrializing. I already told you that Turkey industrialized quite late. Although there are discussions about that, I would argue that Turkey industrialized quite late, after the Republic was built, and quite a while after that. And Far East will industrialize, right? So we talk about early industrializers and late industrializers, and you're going to see that the early industrializers will be the guys that will be colonizing, and that will later on fight one another because, well, due to those colonizing issues, and because of the grabs for colonies, you will see that the late industrializers will come to the international system or will start affecting the international system much, much later. Okay, I'm actually giving you hints about the answer to the question in the debate here. Yes?
You said that increasing second solidity is most important for industrialization. But in today's talks, I think innovation is the most important factor.
I think then innovation was again very important, but innovation was actually the reason why industrialization took place in those countries, right? Well, actually, wasn't there innovation in China? I already told you that printing press was first found in China, first invented in China. But why didn't China industrialize before the West? Although they were innovating, what was the problem? Please remember this question. I am actually going to talk about this throughout the semester. Okay? Innovations do not only take place in the West, but they actually become, they actually lead to more, such as industrialization in the West. So we're going to talk about the reasons. Okay? That's what the class is all about. Why is it the West that came to dominate the international system? That's something that everyone should ask. It's an important question. Yes?
So you also talk about colonialism and colonization. I'm interested in knowing what is the timing between industrialization and colonization? And do you think that colonization, if it occurred concurrently, did it help assist the expansion of the industrial process in the West?
Well, I'll start from the last question. When you have an innovation, can you keep it secret? When the A-bomb was invented, was it kept secret? Or was it possible to keep it as a secret? Not really. Russians came up with it. Indians did, right? Pakistan, which didn't have much of an economic power, actually came up with the technology, and that is mostly because you use spies to actually get the secrets, right? You have intelligence to gather the secrets of other states' innovations. So innovations will disperse. There's no way of stopping it. Okay? And no one could stop it, but England actually for a while became the first industrializer, the earliest industrializer, had a naval power, quite a huge naval power, that actually made England's job much easier, right, to colonialize. So I would say that you can't stop innovations, and you're not trying to actually spread your innovations to other countries, but it will spread eventually. Okay? And the connection between industrialization and colonialization. I don't want to get into the details of it now because it's coming up. So I want you to think about it more, but I'm just telling you that industrialization required certain things such as new markets, raw materials, acquiring raw materials, okay? So can we then say that there was no other way?
Well, if you're saying that England is the first, could you then argue that England's naval power allowed it to industrialize so rapidly because it then colonized, and that colonization process created the advantage that other nations indefinitely?
Can you argue that? Yes. Absolutely. I think you can argue that.
So it's colonization.
I think what you need to pay attention to here is we are talking about causal mechanisms, but we're not talking about causal mechanisms that will go from here to here. We're actually talking about cycles, right? Remember the yin-yang picture in the beginning of the course? In that picture, I had arrows, but those arrows were both sides, right? Going both sides. So innovation will lead to economic development, and economic development will increase innovation. So I am telling you that if we call this an international system, what we live in, an international system, everything is connected, okay? So you can never argue that, oh, it was industrialization that led to colonization, or it was the naval power of England that led to industrialization. Actually, they affected each other, okay? And without a huge naval power, would England be able to colonize? I don't think so. So it was very important to have the military technology, but in the meantime, it was quite important that there was a need for new markets, okay? So I kind of want you to think about several things throughout the course, okay? Please make notes as I ask these questions, because I sometimes want to answer them right away, but the answer will become more clear throughout the course. And one thing is, can or could anyone avoid industrialization? Was it possible to avoid it? Especially if you live in Europe, if you are a country located in Europe. Was it possible? Okay? Or can we actually argue that industrialization did not necessarily have to lead to colonization? So was it unavoidable that industrialization led to colonization in the world? Did we have to have imperialism in the world? Okay? Was it something that could be avoided? Different theories approach this differently, guys. So some theories would say that there is colonization actually was unavoidable, and as a result of colonization, the capitalist system came to a problematic period, and then the capitalist system would lead to a certain different system, and then the whole world would experience a proletariat revolution. So you have all sorts of different theories that approach the international system differently, okay? From next week on, I'm going to start talking about them. But now, I want you to just understand what industrialization is, what it led to, what it meant, okay? The theory part, we'll get into it. Don't rush, okay? So, the French Revolution. I'll move on to French Revolution. We have heard of the French Revolution so many times. Why is it so important? All those really nice ideas and ideals, right? We've heard of the French Revolution in the context of, yes?
It's launched industrial revolution.
A what?
It's launched industrial revolution.
Okay. It was connected. So what were the ideals of the French Revolution? Liberty, right? Freedom, free ideas, equality. All these ideals, I call them ideals, right? Were the ideas that came from the French Revolution. And French Revolution actually affected not only France, but also other countries. When we talk about Arab Spring, people actually talk about French Revolution too. Oh, is it going to be something like the French Revolution? Will the Arabs actually eventually become free? So French Revolution has affected the whole world, and it still is something that we talk about. Now, I think I heard someone saying nationalism. Okay, so Destina, you said nationalism. Why? Why was nationalism a huge part of French Revolution? When you have the idea of liberty, wouldn't you actually have the idea of, in a nation, the rights as a citizen wouldn't we also talk about, okay, what will the state do for me if I am a free citizen? So if the ideas of citizenship becomes part of your discourse or part of your discussions, then wouldn't you actually say, as a nation, what do we do? So what do we deserve? So the concepts of state and nation are discussed, right? As a result of French Revolution. So when you have the idea of a nation, you don't need to pay the citizens to fight anymore. One thing that Napoleon actually brought to the international system is what? Conscription. So the fact that you actually have people in your military without actually hiring them is a huge revolutionary idea. Guys, we're talking about expansion. How will you expand? You need military power. We talked about naval power, right? So if you have conscripts and volunteers who have nationalistic feelings in them, who feel really enthusiastic about their nation and about their state, hey, they're going to die for you for free. This is probably one of the biggest innovations in the international system. Nationalism is extremely interesting for us in this course, and we will talk about nationalism a lot, because military becomes something that citizens actually want to be in, okay? And people become citizens, they become part of the nation, and because they are part of the nation, they want to die for the nation and for the state. Now, Doruk, if I ask you, can I hire you for my military, for my army, and I'll pay you a lot of money, you'll be like, well, why not? But before, if I actually asked you, I'm not going to give you any money, but I actually want to send you to a war, and you will most probably die in that war, you would be like, what are you talking about? I don't want that. I don't actually want to die, and I don't want to die for someone else anyways, okay? So that was the mentality before French Revolution. But afterwards, with nationalism, the ideology, development of the ideology of nationalism, we actually have people willing to die for the nation. And that actually means an army for Napoleon of 700,000 soldiers. Okay? I am talking about a huge army that Napoleon was able to gather. 700,000. Okay? So why would these people be in his military, in his army? Because he actually comes up with the idea of nationalism and conscription, and he ties these ideas together. So you become proud of serving for your country, okay? That is a huge idea, and we are going to talk more about it, okay? So I have like 3 minutes. I am going to get into the Concert of Europe in those 3 minutes, okay? You heard of the Concert of Europe. You heard of Congress of Vienna. Somewhere in your history classes, you heard of Congress of Vienna because Napoleon tries the Napoleonic Wars tries to conquer Europe and establish a French empire, but it is not successful. And by Congress of Vienna, these guys, these leaders in Europe, come together and say, hey, we don't want wars anymore. What we want actually is, whenever we have a problem with each other, let's get together and talk about that problem. Does this remind you of something? What? Do we do that in the international system today? United Nations, Okay, so Congress of Vienna and the Concert of Europe period. Concert of Europe is a period, okay? It's a time period from 1815 until 1870s. There are discussions on when it ends, but it ends obviously with the First World War because there will be a war between these nations. But for about 100 years, the European powers say, whenever we have a problem, let's meet. Let's talk about our problems. This is actually the first sign of multilateralism. Okay, I want you to learn the term, multilateralism. Remember, George Bush was very much criticized, the US was very much criticized for invading Iraq because he was being unilateral, right? Because he did not care about what the UN said or what other states said about invasion of Iraq. So these guys then are talking about something that Bush did not really care about, which is multilateralism, okay? Yes?
There's actually, I don't know the term for it, because there's a theory that England actually went with America, so they wouldn't be unilateral, so they would be bilateral instead.
Didn't work though, right?
No, but to a certain extent they were backed up, so I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I argue that they acted unilaterally because although the UN was supporting it, other states were.
Yeah, there was definitely a coalition powers, right, that supported the U.S. So it wasn't that U.S. was completely on his own acting in Iraq. But guys, the kind of multilateralism here is pretty much all the powerful states in Europe at the time, okay? So in the case of the UN, it would be a UN Security Council decision that would point to multilateralism, that would point to a multilateral decision for the invasion of Iraq, okay? So Concert of Europe then will be important for us because it is the first sign of multilateralism. Later it will lead to League of Nations, and then it will lead to United Nations, okay? Let's stop here and I will continue. For next week, please start reading the next reading after Strayer. Okay, so I am going to start with the theories. Thank you.